There's definitely an art scene in Staten Island. Don't be fooled by mainstream media. Staten Island has little pockets of art, creative people, new businesses. Say your name and title, and I'll do mine.
All right. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bennett, the Executive Director at Staten Island Arts.
And I'm Jenna Mimoso, Deputy Director.
And today we're going to be taking you on a tour of some of our favorite locations and businesses on the North Shore of Staten Island,
highlighting the connection between art, commerce, and culture. Here we are at Everything Goes Book Cafe, where literally everything goes. You can find music, you can find art, you can find food, you can find it all here at Everything Goes. This place is like the closest to New Orleans in New York. They've made their own library here, people donate books, and they're educating the community around them, which is very important. And now I'm in my living room here at ETG.
I think I'm gonna buy this one. I think I found a winner. Jane Pitney.
It says, kids, you need an adult if you want to see how this works.
So welcome to Staten Island Makerspace. This is a place that's at the intersection of old traditions and new artistic practices, and it's a place where everybody can find everyone else in the Staten Island art community. Emily, can you tell us a little bit about the Makerspace members who are operating their own small businesses out of Makerspace?
Michael Ardito, he runs a company called Hometown Type, and he restores and resells typewriters. So it's kind of magical in a way.
I've noticed that his space has grown.
Yes.
And I hope that that's because his business is growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So he is actually one of the last typewriter repair shops in New York.
Wow.
And he's right here in Makerspace.
Here we are at Flagship Brewery, the renaissance of brew culture on Staten Island.
The way this place looks now has a lot to do with how the community wanted it to be. A lot of the stuff you see like this flag those are by people that just hang out here. They just did that one day, you know.
There's an art scene here. He just said it. We're here. We're all here.
And I think that's what makes a community or a neighborhood attractive to just be around or live or open a business. That's what might get people to this neighborhood for the first time. That's what people that frequent this neighborhood, I think, love about it, and we just want to be somewhere in there.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, Julia.
Hello. Hi.
Oh my God, Julia looks amazing.
Thank you. It goes all the way to the back, so if you, so.
You did such a beautiful job setting this up. Am I spelling Jasmine?
Yeah, Jasmine.
Okay.
That was a great guess. Everyone just wonders like, oh, what's that smell when we come in? And I'm like, Jasmine, but you're the first person to figure it out what it was.
So when people drive down Bay Street and they come into the Bay Street corridor, if they're coming from the Verrazano Bridge, one of the first things that they see as they enter the Bay Street corridor is the mural of elephants, the beautiful golden doors that are the doors of your family's restaurant, La Caruana.
You know, a lot of people doesn't really come down to Bay Street as often, but once we did the murals and the golden door, people started to notice like, oh, I should go in there.
Well, and once people pass by it, they will never forget it.
And they'll never forget, and they try to come back.
The family that owns La Caruana was looking for a way to share its cultural heritage with the rest of the world. And so the young daughter of the restaurant owner founded the museum, which you can now visit.
So here we are at Hypnotronic Comics, steps away from the Staten Island Ferry Terminal. And a large part of their business is supporting local makers and creators that work here on Staten Island.
This place is a mecca for anybody creative in the area. We're promoting them, and they tell everybody our stuff is available at Hypnotronic Comics.
Right.
So it's a cross-promotion deal. It's great.
Right. That's a local artist up there on your wall.
Yes, Santo. He's our local artist. We've sold a few of his pieces before.
This is from an artist, Melissa Prieb. She makes jewelry with comic books, and these are some of the things that she brings in. She also makes frames, and we sold out of those because they're awesome, so I got to get some more of those in.
I think what we've done is we've just basically have this great support system that crosses not only through art and culture, but through commerce as well.
And we do that by supporting our local independently owned businesses, which are often owned by artists.
He's got free posters for us.
Graduated from Hypnotronic Comics.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another Q&A with the Downtown Film Festival. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Kevin Fairchild, the coordinator for the Downtown Film Festival and the Cinema Connex program with Staten Island Arts. And I want to welcome you to day 2 of our nightly Q&As for the film festival. Before we get started, I just want to give a real quick shout out to all of our restaurant partners and partners here in the Bay Street corridor. Without them and the support of them, we wouldn't be able to make this happen. So please make sure you go to the Staten Island Arts website. Check out all the restaurants that are, a couple of them just recently back opened again. Bay House just recently opened. And our favorite, and we know yours too, new La Caruana just opened for pickup. So make sure we're supporting those businesses. We have a couple more that unfortunately aren't able to still be open, like Everything Goes Cafe and Bookstore. So when they get open back up again, please make sure we keep staying in and staying local and supporting those businesses. Also want to give a really big shout out to our funding partner who made this entire program possible. It's all done by a grant through the Neighborhood 360 program, and that is put out by the New York Department of Small Business Services. I've actually taken advantage of their programs many times myself as a small business owner, and I think you should definitely check them out. And thank you again. Tonight is all about the thriller. I am very happy to be joined by Matt Provenzano and Mike Anderson, the creators behind, I hope you saw it because it was a really great short, Hound Dog. Guys, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So let's start at the top. You guys are writers, directors, and you're in it. Where was the inspiration from this? How did the project start?
Matt, jump in there.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we both love science fiction films and like the old classic 1950s sci-fi. I mean, look at Mike's wall. Just look at his posters. We love this shit. We love The Blob and 20 Million Miles to Earth and like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, all this stuff. And I think we always wanted to make a movie in that vein. But when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is like, you want to make it intentionally cheesy. Like, you know, oh, you could see the strings on the UFO, you could see the cheap effects. And those movies have their place and they're super, super fun. But Mike and I wanted to, we saw how influential Stranger Things was and how much people really gravitated towards it, even though it wasn't trying to be an 80s film. It was just kind of inspired by it and then it took it in a different direction. So we wanted to do the same thing that Stranger Things did to the 80s, we want to do to the 50s, to the horror monster movie genre, because we've seen so few movies nowadays do something like that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with that was that we try and tackle every genre that we can when we're making movies, and it's not just because it's we want to try everything, but we specifically we get bored in one category. So we're sci-fi dorks, like probably, as you could see, the wall and everything, that we were like, okay, you know what, we've been working on movies together for about 6 years. Let's go for something bigger. Let's go for this combined project. So
yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the production, sort of like the aesthetic of it. You shot in, I'm assuming, Eggers, right? It looks like a familiar location.
Yeah.
Talk about what it was like having to rebuild this world within Eggers.
So we love Eggers. They opened the other one in historic Richmond town, and it's this beautiful setup. But we didn't think we were going to be able to grab that one because it was the most popular, at the time, and it still is the most popular one outside of COVID-19. That we decided, okay, let's try the Forest one because it's less busy, and they're still set up relatively similar to how it would have looked in the 50s. And at the end of the day, it was just, what can we get away with without having to come in with thousands of dollars worth of props and scene decoration and lighting. The Forest Avenue Eggers already had most of what we needed, so it was like this gem.
Yeah, it took very little work to transform it. I mean, we really we did as best we could, and we covered all of the candy wrappers because those are clearly modern, and we put our own posters on the walls, and we made it look more 50s than it actually was, but it didn't take a lot of work because Eggers is so inherently nostalgic that it was just from the get-go, it was easy for us.
Yeah, and that was the main goal, was just nostalgia, and none of us were born in the 50s here. I know I wasn't. I'm assuming you weren't as well. You know,
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. So, but it still has that nostalgic feeling. You know, you watch something from the 50s. One of my favorite movies, American Graffiti, which was a big inspiration to me for this script, was that I wasn't there, but I know the nostalgia because it's so implanted in me. So I wanted to bring something from the 50s because it was just, no matter how old you are, you look at that and you're like, wow, I'm there, I'm here, I'm in it, I'm in the 50s. Where's Elvis? You know, like what's going on? So.
Yeah, it becomes about, I think, you know, when you didn't live through it, it becomes about your own sort of interpretations of it as well, and how you've been exposed to it through other movies, through television shows and everything. And it sort of becomes almost an interpretation of the art and the cinema of that time as well.
Mm-hmm. I think Lindsay Ellis once said that the reason we look so fondly back to the specific decades of the 50s and the 80s is because, and I don't want to paraphrase, but she said something along the lines of like every other decade in American history was more transitional. Like we were changing and we were growing, but the 50s and the 80s were really like two of the only decades where for 10 years we were okay. We were just like, you know what, let's hang out for a little bit. This is nice. Let's change later, you know, for better or for worse. But yeah, so I found that really interesting.
What is it about the sci-fi films that you guys really love?
I mean,
well, it's so hard. That's such a hard question, and I think it's only because, you know, for me, it was always sci-fi. Like that was just it. I was born, and you know, 3 weeks into being an infant, my uncle introduced me to Star Wars. You know what I mean? It's in my blood. I have Han Solo posters that you can't see around the room too, you know? And I think especially now, in the past few years, with a lot of the changes going on within the country, you know, the presidency and where we are now, the sci-fi genre is something that is so much more of an escape than your typical drama or comedy, because a sci-fi it's not set in our world. It's a science fiction. It's an escape. So I think specifically this past year when we started developing this, it was just really to escape to what we remember as kids, you know, running around the house dressed as R2-D2 and, you know, things like that.
You're also able to take something like that, like the sci-fi genre, and use it to better explain what we're going through in our life better than any drama or any horror that I can think of. Like there's films like The Blob, which is such a wonderful, fun movie. To this very day, it's being enjoyed by millions. There's a whole festival dedicated to it every year. But then you have films like The Day the Earth Stood Still that talks about humanity and violence and where we're going in the future. You know, The Twilight Zone, it's able to shine a light and a magnifying glass on the reality we're living in by going to a different reality. And that's so cool. You know, you look at these funny space aliens and it's like, as a kid, you're into it because it's just cool looking and it's colorful. But the older you get, the more you realize that there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, I had a really good friend of mine, and my mentor in my undergrad years is a film critic for NPR, and he talked a lot about how, particularly in the 50s, the sci-fi films were, you know, trying to wrestle with this idea of communism and this idea of fear of others and fear of strangers. And you could often sort of tell where the film landed in terms of its politics on who was right. Was it the scientists that were right and that the creatures were there in like this peaceful sort of thing, or was the military right and they were there to sort of take over everything, right? And it was very much of that era of who's right, who's wrong, who do we trust kind of thing.
Right. I could think of two examples that like just perfectly elaborate what you said, which is that one is the original Godzilla, which, like Mike will tell you, as Mike loves Han Solo, I love Godzilla. I have so many figures and shit. And it was made as a response to the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like that's the whole reason Godzilla exists. He was just supposed to symbolize natural destruction. And another film that represents that is a newer film called Attack the Block, which I think came out in 2009. It's like one of John Boyega's first roles. And that interesting thing about that is that there's monsters in it, and it's very sci-fi, very fun. And the monsters specifically kill people and they eat people. However, they're given a reason for it, and they're not just acting based off their own accord. They explain why they're eating people, but the only bad guys, quote unquote, the only antagonists in the movies are the police, because they're not given a reason for what they do. And it's so interesting how the filmmakers took human eating monsters and made them kind of sympathetic, and then took this other issue, and it's fascinating. That's long answer. That's why I love sci-fi.
What I loved about quality, or not, what I loved about the most recent Godzilla reboot was that it was really, for me, about the fallacy of man, right? Like everything that man did, everything that humans did in that film just made the problem worse, and we didn't learn, right? I mean, it's like, here's a creature that burrowed a hole through a wall to get towards a nuclear weapon or whatever. Let's feed it some more. Like, that works. This is how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the new Godzilla movies, the reboot kind of is going back to the original, where it is, you could see political and humanity divides and everything like that. Whereas, like Godzilla from 1999 or 2000, the Matthew Broderick, just, here's a monster and it's eating people and there's no moral compass. Look at me, I'm gonna make a joke because I'm Matthew Broderick, and that's the story, Yeah. But yeah, the reboot, especially with, even though Cranston was in it for however long he was really in it, it was talking about class systems and workers and where they land on a scale of what happens if there's a nuclear reaction. Who dies first? Who's allowed to die? Who's expendable? Like they're turning them very, very political in a sense, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's turn back to you guys. You are co-writers, directors. You're in the film together. Talk a little bit about that dynamic and how that works, because there aren't a lot of people who work together as closely in that sort of partnership. So how did it start, and how do you guys work together?
Yeah, Matt.
Want me to take that? So the reason we met was because we worked on a mutual friend's project, and so we just met under the guise of, okay, we're working on a film, and he was more into the acting side, I was more into the directing side. And the more we talked about it, the more we kind of understood each other. Like, okay, we can do something here. And so we just kept working together. And the reason our friendship and our professional relationship works so well is because realistically, all we do is this. Like when we like go to a restaurant or something, when we get together, there's nothing else we talk about except filmmaking and what we're doing right now. We don't talk about food or sports or anything. I've known Mike for almost a decade. I haven't talked about a single sport. I don't think ever. But yeah, that's really how we started, and that's the reason why I think we work together so well. And also because because we've known each other so long, we're similar to brothers in that we always bicker when we're on set, and we disagree a lot, but that makes the product so much better. Because if it was just one person behind the camera saying, I want it this way, I want this to be here, there's no challenge there. There's nobody saying, well, why do you want this there? Why should this be like that? With me and Mike, he can have an idea and I'll say, Mike, I don't agree with that. And then we'll talk about it. And then we'll come to a conclusion that was even better than either one of us could have thought, because we debated it,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the idea of a co-director, honestly, people working together is brilliant. And I'm not going to say, Tarantino is one of the greatest directors of all time. He's a single director. I think the co-directorship is a better setup, because if I had full control and my idea sucked, I wouldn't know, because nobody really told me. But as a co-director, if I don't like Matt's idea, I say that sucks. There's somebody who can level me. You know what I mean? I think sometimes being the only director, and we've both directed our own singular projects, and it's, it's harder. You know, I give people that direct their own projects a lot of credit, but I just think a partnership in directing is healthier. It's more strategic. You're on your toes more. It's more fun because you're sharing this idea with somebody, and you're either agreeing or disagreeing. And like Matt said, we disagree a lot, but when we disagree, we always find something that was better.
Yeah,
You know, we better.
If there's any young filmmakers listening to this who want to get into it or want to become better at the craft, I would suggest finding a partner and making at least one project with them, because it helps you level your ego. It helps you get your own head out of your ass. It's just like, you need it. You need a back and forth. You need a yin and a yang.
Yeah, and I think exactly. And I think what works best with Matt and I, just to go back to another part of your question, was that we have very different writing styles. And when we're reading through specifically the feature that we have for Hound Dog that we're writing, you could see who wrote what, but it's not a separated, world. And I think another thing that works about Matt and I specifically is that I love to write character driven pieces. I like dialogue. I like conversation. Matt is fantastic at creating a visual and, the concept of the monster and what it represents. Whereas I like to write characters that are having a conversation about a hot dog and then they're going and fighting something. That makes sense?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny that you both sort of mentioned the idea of keeping each other in check on set, because I wonder what that then looks like in the edit room, because often where directors sometimes need someone to really help them is on set, because then you get into post, and suddenly in post, what you thought you had is not what you actually have. And so if you have that ability to kind of watch what's happening both as a creator and an observer, have you found that helps your post process?
Yeah, I think so. I think it works a lot because the both of us are also editors. That's how I make my living. I'm an editor. I think it's really important that you need to know how to edit if you're going to direct, if you're going to act, if you're going to do anything like that.
Filmmaking in general, you should learn how to edit. Learn the tricks of the trade, not just to be able to make your own work, but because it's learning. You want to be the best in what you do, so work on being the best. And we were kind of forced into that because lack of funding. You just, okay, I'm going to write it, I'm going to shoot it, I'm going to take my iPhone, I'm going to learn how to edit while I do this.
Yeah, and the movie is written 3 times. It's like the screenplay, and then when you're on set, and then when you're editing. It's the film you're finished with editing is completely different than the film you wrote. And if it's not, then there might be something wrong. Like because you need to have some kind of change, and post is the best way to figure that out. Somewhat for the worst. Mike and I have deleted whole scenes that we worked hours on because we just watch it back and we're like, it doesn't work for the whole flow. So.
And that's a good reason why it works too, is because we do fight each other in post as well. This past year, so we wrapped the short for Hound Dog, and then I went and worked on a cruise ship for 6 months. So there was a huge lack of, communication and things like that. So every couple of weeks, Matt would send me a draft and, a color draft or some dialogue from the short. And I'd be like, no, we need a different take. We need this, we need that. And he'll do the same for me. We'll just send each other clips and say, what do you think? And then we'll be like, no, adjust this, adjust that. So yeah, we bounce the ideas off each other constantly.
That's great. So you're working on a feature for this then? Is that what I heard?
Yeah. So we are probably between 6 or 7 months of finishing our feature script. So we're in our 3rd draft right now.
Yeah, we've been working on this since the new year. We're so in love with the script, and we've every week we'll think of something different. Maybe we can take this thing in a different direction, and then we try it and we're like, wow, that makes it a lot better. And so we're just constant for months. We're going to be just perfecting and crafting the script, and it's so much fun because it's fun. So
like Matt said, that's all we do is talk about movies. So now we have a reason to talk about movies. You know, we'll be on the phone from 9 o'clock to midnight, just talking about what we're going to do with this one character. And it's fantastic. The script writing process is my favorite. You know, now the hardest part is just funding and finding people to finance. And then it gets not fun anymore.
Yeah. Financing is never fun. That's always the hard part. Yeah. Something I like asking filmmakers who've been around a little while. What was your best day on set, either with this film or any film?
That is a fantastic question. I'd have to think about that for a minute. Mike, do you have an answer?
No, I think for me, the most fun we had on a set collectively was when we shot Major Key. Major Key was my World War II film that we did a couple of years ago. And we just rented out a house in South Jersey on like 6 acres of land and shot it and slept there. And just, you know, we became an actual family because it's about a squad of World War II soldiers that become a family. That was my favorite time on set because we were just jamming. We had a guitar with us. Like,
I agree. I think that week was probably my favorite, but I keep what keeps coming to my mind is whenever I would shoot improv sketches with some friends that are vastly funnier than I am. But I think the one that will always stand out is I made this awful film called Mia. Please don't watch it. It's so bad. And there was a kiss scene in it, and it was my first kiss scene that I ever directed. And up until then, it was in the forest at night, and there were a lot of bugs, and the two actors who were supposed to kiss were miserable, and they hated each other. They hated each other, and they hated being there. I had a headache. I wanted to vomit. I was so upset that I just wanted to get through this. And it ended with the kiss. So I'm like, okay, I'm dreading it. And I'm like, okay, please, just do this for me. I know how you guys feel, but just try your best. Make this look good. So I get behind the camera because at that time I was also operating the camera. And then they do their thing. And the shot looks exactly how I envisioned. And as soon as I saw that, I lost all of that anxiety I had. And I remember going, cut, fuck yeah. And I was so excited. And that to me represents all of filmmaking, is that you have like 48 hours straight of stress and anxiety, and you want to poop your pants. But as soon as you get that one shot that you see that you've been waiting for, and everything aligns perfectly, it's magic. There's nothing else like it.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes is that one.
So conversely, what has been your most stressful day on set, and how did you get through it?
Most stressful days, they've been on every set we've had. I'm gonna say that we haven't had a seriously stressful day since we made a couple of our first movies. However, the first night on set of shooting Hound Dog at Eggers, from about 9:30 p.m. to like 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, we got very little done. And we felt the eyes of our cast. Everyone was tired. We were like, oh my God, what do we do? I feel awful. I feel like the worst person.
Yeah.
So that was like the most, I wouldn't say stressful. That was the most emotional time on set for me, because I felt like if that were to be what happens constantly, this isn't for me anymore.
I agree. I 100% I agree. I think we were way in over our heads. We thought we could shoot this whole thing in one night. And so we had all of the actors ready and done, and their hair was all done. The makeup artist, there was one, and then eventually like 2 or 3 other girls who knew how to do makeup jumped in. But the one sole makeup artist was actually pouring sweat by how much she was working.
Wow.
And the more we were filming, the more we realized it's getting later, and we still have this whole other cast to bring in, and we're not even close to doing it. And I remember this one moment where I just kind of, between takes, I just stood outside and just looked up at night, and I realized we're gonna have to come back and do it a second day. And Mike came outside and he started talking about how we're gonna set up the shot. He's like, okay, I have an idea. What if we scrap this, but we go this direction because we'll save time? And I interrupted him. I said, Mike, we're going to have to come back another day. We need to call this. This is not going well. And we failed that entire crew. I mean, they all came back. They loved working with us. We were so apologetic, but I remember going home that morning, because it was morning, and I was in bed looking at my ceiling thinking like, I trained my whole life for this. This is what I always told people I want to do. Is it what I want to do? Do I want to keep feeling like this? 'Cause this sucks. But then the second day was great. So,
The second day was so much fun. We came back, everyone knew their lines. We brought in the bullies, a fantastic cast of our friends and fellow artists on the island. And they came in, they nailed the scene. Somebody got Wendy's. So I was like, yes.
That's how you know it's getting good.
Yeah, you bring in those, that's it.
That's it. It's good. It's good. So what's the plan for this then? Or I mean, shorts don't really have a distribution life. There's some, but trying to get it out there. What's next for Hound Dog? Other than the feature.
So with the short, we're really just trying to use it to market and get out there. I'll be honest with you, we have not really set up a long-term plan with the short itself. We're really just aiming, we have a pitch package set up and a concept art, on the side for when we optimistically find producers and stuff like that. So really what we're doing with the short is we're going to, if it lives any kind of life as a short film itself, take it on the road and advertise it. But what we're really focused on is trying to get involved in conventions and Comic-Cons and things like that, because we both think that Hound Dog would be really cool if you were to show up at like New York Comic-Con and there's like a monster set up in a booth. And that's kind of the route that we're trying to take with everything right now in order to get this feature made. And we know that's going to be an elaborate year or a year and a half or so.
Yeah, so the short film's really, like Mike said, the short film's a tool just to it's like a stepping stone to get to the feature. It's just to show people that what the idea is and that we can do it. So I think the plan now is take it to as many film festivals as we can. I mean, that was the plan, and then the world went to shit, and here we are. But just like show as many people as we can, go around the country with it, introduce people to the concept of Hound Dog. And I think the short film is the best way to do that, because when my brother saw it for the first time, he said it felt like a cold opening to something bigger. And that is the perfect thing to say, because it's going to something that's going to be much bigger and much cooler. And that's all we want to tell people about. We're so excited.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, that's what we're excited about. As stressful as it's going to be carrying this film around and touring it around, I'm just really excited for that. Like last night on the phone with Matt, I said, it would be cool if we were at a convention center and we hired a bunch of people to be dressed as Men in Black to go around and say, have you seen this creature? Like we got all these ideas.
Don't take the idea.
Yeah.
I won't.
All right.
It's definitely not my genre. I mean, I will say definitely it. Just watching it, it was beautifully shot, incredibly well edited, and definitely left me wanting more. So I think that's a good place to be with it. So
thank you, man. That's so kind of you to say.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We owe it to a lot of people. It's not just us at all. We had offline editors, we had a sound mixer, we hired Pastel, the band, to do original music in it. It's all thanks to, it takes a village, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you ever so much, both of you, for participating in our Q&A today. Good luck. Can't wait to see the feature. I think it's going to be great. Only word of advice I might give you is give yourself more than 2 nights to shoot the feature. That's all I'm going to say.
No,
maybe 3.
A whole feature in 3 nights.
That's fine. You can do it.
When the time comes.
Exactly. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow with another Q&A. And don't forget, Sunday is a huge day. We have Starting at 5 o'clock, we've got Huddled Masses, which is an immigration story. At 6 o'clock, we've got a tremendous panel with Jeff Gomez, who is really the guy who invented transmedia and is all about taking any kind of intellectual property and putting it across multiple types of genres. And the way he does that is to really try to find the core of what story is. And he's going to be talking about his own personal creative journey, as well as trying to help all of us who are creators, who are artists, to find our journey, to tell our story, and figure out the best way to possibly do that. And then we'll be wrapping up with the final Q&A at Sunday night at 7. So everyone, thank you so much, and we will be back.